And my name is Christine Grauer, and I'll be facilitating the session today. I am on the board for SHEN, and I've been a member of SHEN as a participant for a number of years, and SHEN literally transformed my life. Fantastic, thank you. So yeah, SHEN transformed my life. It really opened the door to my spiritual journey, and it is, yeah, I am eternally grateful for SHEN, which is why I am on the board and I help out. And this, what this conference is about is very near and dear to me, and it's about changing the way education is done, because the future of humanity is lying in the hands of our children, and we gotta get to the root of things. And we can teach all us adults who are hard to learn, hard to train, all that stuff, but we got to get to the root, and it's through our children and the educators. And I believe that that is truly how we will transform the world. So who was here last week? I can get a show of hands. For those who are sharing your video, it's really helpful if you share your video. So last week we had a good to see you here, Shiv. We had a really great session last week. So last week we introduced what SHEN was all about, and we talked about the what we were doing here with this conference. And Shiv has spent a lot of time putting together this proposal to change the way education, or improve the way education is being done. And so we gave a little bit of an introduction to that proposal, and we talked about human instincts and contemplative education, and we had a lot of great discussions. So what we want to do today is we want to talk about the why contemplative education, and what is it going to offer. And we're going to talk about reductionist. It's like, what is that word? But we'll explain reductionist and holistic narratives. So my dear friend Shiv will be delivering that portion. So that will go from now until 10:45, and then at that point I'll introduce Robin and explain who Robin is, and she will help to give an overview of this proposal, this wonderful proposal that we are all here gathered to really beef up and improve, because we want to change, again, improve the way education is being done. So Robin will help to really give an overview on the different pieces. And then after we have a break, we're going to go into breakout sessions, and so into smaller groups, so that everybody can have a chance to give an opinion on the proposal and where they could see room for improvements, and where are we missing things. So that is the intention of the discussion groups. And then we will come back, and again, I'll explain a little more before each section, but there's your overview. After that, we will have a group, we'll reconvene as a larger group. We'll mention some takeaways from each of our little breakout groups, and we will wrap up until next week. The beautiful thing is we get to see each other again next week. So Shiv is our wonderful, the head of all of this. And so for those who don't know Shiv, he's a genius, really. And he is eternally patient and graceful, and he's always giving grace. And so not only does he have those beautiful soft skills, but he is just yeah, he's a master in his domain. So he's a civil engineer by trade, right? So he did this in India, and he's got graduate degrees in the USA and Waterloo. And after he retired, he started up SHEN in 2000, and he was on a mission, and it's so amazing to see this come to fruition now. And he's recently published The Common Ground, a Unified Basis for Existence, which won an international Peace Prize, which is absolutely beautiful. And so SHEN is on this mission, and I'm so grateful for all of you for taking time out of your Sunday, out of this holy day, for this beautiful, beautiful purpose. So thank you, Shiv, for making this all possible, and thank you everyone for joining and contributing to this. So go ahead, Shiv, you've got the platform.
Thank you very much, Christine, for the nice words. You warmed my heart. As always, you are such a graceful person. Thank you very much, and very kind to me. Why complement the rational with the contemplative education? That is essentially the topic of today's presentation. And I will begin with a brief review of what we talked about last time. We talked about how when God created the heaven and the earth, the mind and the body, that's when things got rolling. At point A, spirit started to grow and became a first cell of a life form that took us almost 12 billion years. 10 billion years for the planet to form, and then another 4 billion years for first life form appear on the planet. And then the first life form was also very, very infinite. So infinitesimal, you can say. You could not really perceive it or see it. And then further evolution or further growth got us to first human-like cell. And then from the first humanoid again to first cell of me, and then from the first cell of me to 37.2 trillion cells of what I consist of right now. So as I went on this journey from the spirit to being me, or my now, I collected a lot of memory of what, and that collection started right at this point. Memory starts, matter starts. Matter has got mind. We think matter is mindless. That's what science started thinking. Matter was mindless. So it'll be easier to study what is mindless. That's how science started studying matter. And that was the assumption. And then scientists, in the beginning of this century, came to realize that mind was not mindless. Matter was not mindless. Matter had its mind, which was not much different from the mind of the animate life forms. So mind, one of the things with mind is it has memory. So my memory starts from there and goes on all the 14.5 billion years to my now. And that memory with which my first cell forms, okay, that memory is called inbuilt instincts. So nobody teaches me how to speak. For example, I start speaking myself. Nobody teaches me how to eat. I start eating myself. And that is because of the learning that has gone on beyond my first life cell. And then when I was conceived, from there on, then there's memory of the 9 months I was in the womb of the mother. And then early memory of the experience when I grew up in my hometown. So all that memory, right up to now, conditions us. Okay. And I prepared this slide to kind of summarize what all we talked about last time. Spirit is energy and consciousness conjoined together, cannot be separated one from the other. When you talk of energy, you talk of consciousness. You talk of consciousness, you talk of energy. But both of these we cannot talk much about because they are unseen. If we cannot see anything, we cannot talk about it. So these are both unseen. Spirit is unseen, and spirit is like a coin with two sides. One side is energy, and the other is consciousness. You can't separate the two sides. And that is what spiritual wisdom has been ever since millennia. And that is what science has now begun to understand ever since they started studying quantum physics. And that happened the beginning of the 20th century. Energy, when you think of energy, you think of activity. And consciousness, whereas on the other side is inactive, it's a stationary witness, whereas activity means movement. Okay. From energy comes matter. That's what we have always assumed. And matter has got a capability of moving in time and space. And this inactive witness just stands there and sees the movement of the material world and stores the movement of the material world in the memory. Memory is always related with the past, not with the future, but the future depends upon it. So mind has got a capability of storing past memory and then deciding for the future. These are the capabilities of the mind. And matter just moves, it changes from time to time. It grows. My one cell grew into 37.2 trillion cells. And the same way, the whole universe keeps on growing from the spirit. What is the problem? The problem of human condition, we started to define last time, is the memory of the past. Memory of the past before I was conceived, my instinctive memory, essentially, and also the memory of my early life, the memory of the 9 months I spent in my mother's womb and early 10, 15 years of conditioning in my parents' home. All that memory, right from the Big Bang to when I started to think on my own feet, that conditions me. And when I start to think on my own feet, I start to plan for the future, and that future plans are thwarted by the past conditioning. So I cannot achieve success in realizing the purpose because the instincts with which I was conceived come back to haunt us. They are a formidable barrier. And then after conception to when I grew up, that conditioning of this life becomes a formidable factor. It is the past that stops us from connecting with our future. And contemplation helps us deal with this problem, how we can prevent the conditioning of our memory from realizing our purpose. So we were talking of time and space from the Big Bang to now. 14.5 billion years of time has passed. 10 billion years after the Big Bang, planet Earth appeared, and then first life form appeared about 4 billion years later. So when the first life form appeared, then any life form has to have some kind of a primordial senses of perception to save themselves from danger and also to sustain themselves. For life perception by the senses, howsoever primordial they may be, we need that. And then when the first humanoid appeared, then human senses, we got 5 of them. Some creatures may have just 1 sense or maybe half a sense. We got 5 senses, and the beginning of human senses started about 500,000 years ago when the first humanoid appeared. Okay, but my instincts, beginning of the universe of mind and matter, that's when my instincts started. Okay, and my life is only just a tiny bit of time here. Okay, and what I do as a human being now depends upon the whole of it. Okay, and how do I transcend my time back to the beginning? That is what contemplation can help us do.
Hey, Shiv, there's a question in the chat if I can ask you that now. Okay. So it's in the past memory, but is the past memory only a barrier? How does memory manifest itself into an experience, which is important for us?
How does memory manifest itself? Past memory is always unconscious. Okay. When we connected with consciousness, then desire appears. Okay. And if that desire is always connected with the instinctive memory, then I'm running survival instincts only. I'm only connected with the past. I'm not looking at the future. That is how my future purpose is thwarted. Because the persistence of the past coming back to my consciousness. We can talk about it a little later again. But for now, I'll go on, look at space. I've tried to define here space by size. From size 0 to infinity as you go that way. Okay, and mathematically, 10 to the power n, okay, 10 to the power 0 is 1, okay? When n is 0, this size from here to here, you can say is 1 foot or 1 meter, whatever one means to you. Okay, let's say 1 meter. If this is 1 meter, this is roughly 2 meters. So that's what I am. Less than 2 meters, far less than 2 meters, but I'm somewhere here. From 0, when I was 1 cell, I was almost 0. Now I'm about 2 meters. Okay, but then what is zero? Okay, when n becomes negative, 10 to the power 0 is 1, 10 to the power 1 is 10, 10 to the power 2 is 100, 10 to the power 3 is 1,000. Like that it goes. And when you go negative 10, negative n, 10 to the power minus 1 is 0.1, 10 to the power minus 2 is 0.01. Okay, as the absolute value of n increases when n is negative, then the size decreases. Okay, 10 to the power minus infinity is 0. Okay, n at this point, where size is 0, is minus infinity. And if you go in positive infinity, n to the power plus infinity could be God knows where. Okay, so classical physics deals with human experience, physics of sizes within human experience. Okay, could be somewhere less than 1 meter or 1 foot to maybe few thousand miles or something like that, whatever that range is. Newtonian physics, classical physics deal with that. So within human experience, we have size less than 1 to size whatever, few thousand meters or few thousand kilometers, reach of ordinary human experience. That is the domain of classical physics or Newtonian physics. That's where we study the movement of projectiles, the movement of matter under the application of force. Mechanical force could be electromagnetic force. That kind of study is classical physics. And then Einstein came in the picture. Classical physics was experiment based. Okay, you think, and then you authenticate your thinking by running experiments that are replicable by different people. And replicable experiments, if everybody that replicates an experiment comes to the same conclusion, then that is the truth. Okay, that was how classical physics developed. Einstein wanted work outside of this range. He came up with this theory of relativity. Okay, and his theory of relativity is applicable beyond this upper limit of human experience to the end of this universe, you can say. That's the type of things that he wanted to work in. How do you do experiments with that? Unfortunately, if he was an experimental physics, he could not be working there. He was not an experimental physics. He worked with his own mind. He contemplated, and he came up with the theory of relativity. That's all contemplation based. Any authentication of it was after the fact done by others. Okay, and the principles of theory of relativity, many of them are strange. These people cannot understand the principles of theory of relativity. They were very contradictory of whatever classical physics learned. For example, one of the things classical physics talks about time and space. Time is an independent variable, space is an independent variable. Whereas theory of relativity talks about a fabric of time and space. Time and space is one fabric. Okay. Classical physics talks about the force of gravity. Theory of relativity talks about warping of the fabric of time and space by huge masses or even a tiny mass of matter. Now, those concepts totally unintelligible with people who only study classical Newtonian physics. And Einstein also was a big contributor to what is called quantum physics. What is quantum physics? Quantum physics is the study of matter between size 0 and the lower end of the domain of human experience. We can probably see half a foot, 6 inches very easily, 1 inch very easily, 1/8 of an inch very easily, thousandth of an inch probably. How about a millionth of an inch? Not at all. Okay. So when you talk of very tiny objects, they behave in totally different ways than the objects in the classical physics domain do. Now, that's when science started to study this range or domain of sizes. They call it quantum physics. Quantum particles are very tiny particles, size of an atom or subatomic particle. Electrons, protons, neutrons, even atoms are quantum particles. Photons, totally quantum particles. Einstein actually pushed in that domain, also pushed in this domain. When he came up with the theory of light, light was always considered to be a waveform. And Einstein established that it is only a wave when you want to see it as a wave, but it is also particles when you want to see it as particles. So the observer comes into the picture to decide what the reality of light is. Light could be particle, could be wave, depending on how you want to see it. So we create our own reality here. That is what our mind is. We talked of subjectivity of the mind. Okay. Actually, the subjectivity of the mind creates the world that we live in. And those tiny particles are the interiority of all matter. Matter is comprised of atoms, comprised of electrons. So those tiny particles that are in the interior of matter, they are the mind of matter. The way they want the matter to behave, that is how the matter behaves. Just like the way my mind wants me to behave, that's how I behave. My mind is, you can say, equal to the mind of matter, which is studied in quantum physics. Spiritual tradition is comfortable with paradoxes, okay? That's what science has to be. Science talks about objective reality, not paradoxes, okay? So when you talk of Newtonian physics, it is not holistic. It doesn't give us the whole picture of matter. It only gives us the picture of matter that is within our everyday experience that we can see with our senses. That's where the idea of reductionism comes in. It gives us a less than holistic picture of existence, okay? It is true of not only spirituality, but also of science. Spiritual tradition is comfortable with paradoxes, whereas many political movements are not. But all truth is paradoxical, whether it's the truth of science or truth of matter is paradoxical. what it is to live in a space of transformation changes, is to engender greater and greater comfort with paradox. And that is what we want to do. Paradoxes in spirituality and physics, in itself, spirit and energy are imperceptible. But from there, all this perceptible universe emerges. So whatever we can see is from whatever we cannot see. Spirit and energy, they are both formless, but the entire universe of form emerges from it. Big paradox. How can somebody or something that's got a form emerge from something which has got no form of its own? In itself, without attribute, but it gives rise to entire universe with attributes. We can say something is green, something is black, something is white, something is sour, something is sweet. Those are the attributes of things. But as far as spirit and energy is concerned, it's got no definition, no attributes. We cannot define it in our language, but because our language is connected with what we can see, what we can perceive, and this is beyond perception. We can perceive electrical energy, we can perceive heat energy, but we cannot know what energy is. When energy takes form, we can perceive it. When it is formless, we cannot perceive.
Shiv, I just want to give you a time check here.
Okay.
We are just past the half hour.
Oh,
So
lovely. Thank you.
Okay.
So there are problems, paradoxes all over. This is what I drew up as the anatomy of religion. All religion, spirit is at the core. That's where the religious wisdom comes from, the spirit. And as you go on towards the outer layers, then this spiritual core is totally inclusive. Then exclusivity starts. Language and culture, we are different. If you speak one language, you can't speak the other. So that's where differences start. And then divine beings and prophets, we all have different divine beings, culture-dependent prophets. Depends upon where I lived, which part of the world I lived. When the respect and the hold in veneration of the prophets of that area, and then social and legalistic comes in, and then political economics come in. So greatest division is on the outside, and the greatest inclusion is on the inside. Okay. Holistic behavior, those who are comfortable with spiritual paradoxes operate from the inclusive inner core. Okay. Those people are comfortable with paradoxes. That's where they operate from. And reductionist behavior, those who aren't comfortable with paradoxes operate from the exclusive outer layers. I talk of a science called holistic science, which is science resulting from the convergence of metaphysics and physics and the scripture. Okay, so if you look at metaphysics, talks about the spirit, which is totally unseen and unseeable, can only be represented by a point. Point has got no dimension at all. From there, everything grows, the spirit grows to become the perceptible universe. And physics says energy, which cannot be seen, can only be represented by a point. And that point grows and becomes the perceptible universe of matter. And science assumed that energy and spirit were separate. Energy was less comprehensive than the spirit, because spirit is where the universe of mind and matter emerges from. Energy gives rise to only the spirit of matter, so that has to be less comprehensive as far as we are concerned. But spirituality always talks about this point and this point being one. And from the absolute spirit, creatures grow, animals grow, matter grows, and humans grow. Depending upon the configuration of growth, the growth could be in one form or the other. Scriptures of the word, they all agree on this diagram. We have a human body. This area is represented by human body. This area is represented by human mind. Mind has got a sensory faculty. It's got an ego identity. It's got an intellect. Okay. And then there is something beyond it, which is not within our experience. We don't know what it is, but it is there. That is within our experience. And in Arabic, from the Islamic tradition, this word nafs is, I took that from there. It's very important. Nafs talks of the domain of sense perception of the bodily organs, okay? Goes from, sensory faculty of the mind to part of the intellect is also connected with sensory perception of bodily organs, okay? So contemplation is moving our eye or moving our consciousness right from the outside of the body in and taking it as far in as up to here, beyond the range of rationality. Okay. Now this is neurophysiology. Okay. Talking about nervous system and brain stem, amygdala, and neocortex of the brain, and actually the metaphysics and the scripture and the neurophysiology of our behavior is all converging. All right, so a science that develops from the metaphysics and the scripture and neurophysiology of human behavior is what I call the holistic science. Contemplation being in the state of consciousness as far beyond the reach of rationality of sense perception as possible. Okay, so the I here shows my consciousness at this one particular point. I can start moving it inward. Okay, and I can start moving it inward. The inner I go, the more I can perceive. Okay, the more contemplative I get. Okay, here, when my consciousness is in the ego, I'm looking at everything from my ego perspective, my identity perspective, whatever that identity is. When I'm looking at life from my intellectual perspective, intellect being defined as rational, okay, then I look at everything from that perspective, and I can move it beyond to beyond this, the domain of the rational senses, then that is the deepest contemplation that we are capable of. Maybe we can go a little beyond to somewhere here. Okay, the closer we go to the spirit, the more holistic we get. Okay, our survival instincts, they're essential for our survival and sustenance. They are very forceful, they are divisive. They hijack our consciousness, making life unconscious. It is our individual responsibility to free our consciousness from them to unify diversity in each heart and mind. And this is what happens. This gives us a way out of the slavery of survival instincts. We have a gas pedal in our body, okay? Survival instincts keep it pushed automatically to do their bidding, okay? That's our problem. A gas pedal is pushed automatically, but we also have a brake pedal to slow our mind and body. But that brake pedal, we have to choose to push, okay? And if we choose to push that brake pedal, there are two ways. We push it by focusing attention on a life passion, a purpose of life, making it conscious, okay? If we have a passion which is stronger than our inbuilt instinct, then we can start focusing on that. But that is very rare. Only Einsteins can do that. But normal people don't have any life passion when they start living. We can also push it by breathing deep, a practice that trains our brain to lead conscious, purposeful lives. Okay. That breathing deep, we can slower the mind and body, and by slowing the mind and body, we can consciously overrule our instincts. And that is what comes from our neurophysiology. This is science I'm talking here.
Shiv, we are at 1:15. If you have any final important points to make here.
Again, another thing about holistic and reductionist, the people with calm mind, they live holistically. People with mind and body which are not calm, gas pedal has been pushed, they live from the outer layers of divisiveness. And we can teach this way of controlling our instincts to a newborn baby. All you have to do is put it close to your heart and breathe deep, and the newborn baby heart will start syncing with your heart, and breathing will sync with your breathing. And we can teach a new, before a child is born, prenatally, we can predispose it to a calm mind and healthy life, purposeful life, by having the mother take care of my heart stress, calming her mind with deep breathing. And that is the end of my presentation.
Beautiful. Thank you, Shiv.
Sorry I went over by a few minutes, but
oh, that's okay. You're allowed. Now, we had a request from, and I really have no idea how to say the name here, but somebody has to leave at 11 and wanted to say a few words.
I am V. Jha from Pune.
Yes, go ahead. Yeah.
Very happy to listen to Dr. Talwar. I appreciate all that he has said. I have been associated with him for a long time. He told you on the first seminar. What I have to suggest is, Dr. Talwar, are you listening me? Listening to me?
Yeah. Yes, I am. Thank you very much.
All that you have said is one model of India, all that you are telling is all Indian model. So is it possible to call the program as Indian model of contemplative education? Because all that you have said is nothing more than what sages have said million years before. So I think that it will be appropriate. I mean, it is for your consideration. And this is one thing, that is it possible or not, that you decide. And another question is that there are various models in India. One is the model of Sankhya that you have presented. And you have tried to compare it with modern science. I have very little knowledge of that. But the other part, the Sankhya part, I have understood, and it is perfectly all right. But there are other models of thinking of unity in diversity. For example, if you consider the Vedanta model, say Vallabha Vedanta model, or Shankara's Vedanta model, then in Shankara's Vedanta model, there is no other. All is just you. So you start, this is what we have been told right from our childhood, that I start seeing myself in all living beings and all living beings in myself. So this is another model. And in Sankhya model, of course, there will be others, but there will be similarity. So unity, pointing out towards the similarity, is one model, and unity without having a scope of others. I mean, all that we see is nothing but me, and so there's no question of any kind of negative attitude, negative emotions, because I cannot hate myself. So I cannot hate others, if others also me. So these are the different models for consideration before finalizing your final proposal. But in any way, whatever model you take, whether these two models, any other, why should it not be called Indian or classical Indian model of contemplation, or Vedic model of contemplation, contemplative education? These are just a question that came to my mind. I wanted to share with you. Thank you very much.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing, and we'll definitely take these into consideration. We'll keep that discussion offline because we will move forward now with Robin. Shiv, is there any final words that you'd like to say before our friend signs off here?
Well, I agree with Dr. Jha's views, because all that Dr. Jha said, it's very appropriate, and nowhere did Dr. Talwar mention or referred to the Indian philosophers. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll keep these discussions.
May I, Christine, one minute. This is the model of the yoga system, which I'm going to talk about next week.
But Dr. Talwar, Sankhya and yoga is one.
There are other systems too. I do not disagree.
No, Sankhya, Bhagavad Gita tells you, one who sees yoga different from Sankhya, they are children. And those who have understood that Sankhya and yoga are one, they have understood what Sankhya yoga mean.
Okay, these are great topics for discussion. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a long topic here.
Yeah. Thank you.
I understand. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
It was just a suggestion. I'm for
That's what we'd
consideration.
like. Thank you.
So
Absolutely.
I may be permitted to leave. Thank you.
Thank you very much,
Blessings.
Dr. Jha, to come. I think you have blessed this meeting with your presence.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
So you allow me to leave. Thank you. I believe.
Have a good night. Blessings.
Thank
All
you.
the
Thank
best.
you.
Thank you. All right, Robin, you are next on deck. Are you prepared there?
Yes, I am.
There you are. All right. So
Did
Robin
you want me to just
is,
go ahead and start?
yep, go ahead and share. I'll just tell a little bit about you here. So Robin is an active member of SHEN, and she has this amazing ability to take what Shiv says and transform it into everyday language that people can understand. And so she's done that for Shiv's book, and she's written other books as well. She's very involved in world religion. She's got awards for excellence and merit, and she's recognized internationally by the Books for Peace Commission. So Robin is an amazing, amazing contributor to SHEN. And we're very honored to have her present in a way that really allows people to grasp what the underlying meaning is here behind things. And Robin is, again, like Shiv, she's so giving and so helpful in her work. So thank you, Robin, for your presence and your contributions, and go for it.
Okay. First of all, I would love to thank you all for being here. We're looking forward to your thoughts and your input about the proposal. We did suggest that you try and go onto the SHEN website and read the proposal draft to be able to give us some input on how you think it's worded, any suggestions, any additions, and so forth. I mean, that's the purpose of this working conference. This slide presentation is overviewing not what Shiv just went through, but the actual proposal itself. So many of these slides will have exact verbiage from the proposal. Some will have my interpretation to, like Christine says, make it a little easier to comprehend. So we look forward to your input. I'm going to go ahead and start it. This is the overview of the proposal, Envision the Future of Education, Teaching Unity in Diversity. Science and spirituality. I need to get your pictures out of here because I can't see my own slides. There we go. Science and spirituality have had different types of discoveries throughout history. And it's interesting that they have finally come full circle and discovered the same thing through different avenues. First, let's discuss the types of discoveries. Scientists are typically right-brained. They're very logical, analytical. They discover, tested, and ask questions based on logic and what they could verify. They're continuously curious and asking why and how. With modern equipment, they're finally able to go to a point that they could not completely explain. The discovery of energy was kind of an accident. It's odorless, colorless, formless, and invisible. But they now know that it exists in all matter, living and non-living. Spiritual leading individuals tend to be more left-brained. They are in a constant state of search for answers. You learn through observation of nature and deeper reflection. They too are continuously curious and ask why and how. They've explained the purpose and meaning of life and discovered the spiritual life force, which they cannot explain. It's odorless, colorless, formless, and invisible, but they know it exists in all life. So they've come to an agreement. Prevalent systems of education are bounded by rationality. Matter has mass. Energy has no mass. Forms of energy are within sense experience. Energy in itself is not. You can sense the light and the heat, but you can't sense the energy. Einstein has established that truth cannot be limited by rationality. As Shiv explained, he was always pushing the sides of the envelope with his contemplation and his theories. How did Einstein discover the energy mass equivalent? He was a theoretical physicist. He focused his attention to seek the truth underlying matter, and he found it in a manner as our prophets, sages, seers, and philosophers established that the universe of matter and its mind is from the spirit outside the reach of our sense perception. This process of discovery is termed contemplation. Material science calls the ultimate reality of matter energy, while spiritual science of our sages, seers, prophets, and philosophers call its ultimate reality of the animate and inanimate as spirit. Only their methods differ. Scientists use external resources and experiments, equipment that can be duplicated for verification. Then scientists contemplate these rational facts and discover a truth. Or they discover another question that needs to be researched further. Ancient spirituality uses internal resources, such as careful, attentive, and calm mind to search for the truth. The methods thus differ only in the resources and tools of exploration rather than the essential goals and objectives. They both seek the ultimate reality underlying our existence, and they both use internal tools of contemplation without which no discovery is possible. External research is taught in schools, but internal contemplation is not. So typical education is failing for this reason. The universe, all matter, the world, and all living things are part of an immense and undiscernible truth. Educational systems that are now in place try to defend and educate with easy and rational answers. Taking the easy way out continues to fail to transform people into a wholeness mindset that would unify the world. Education should be transformative and empowering. Our scientists, sages, seers, prophets, and philosophers have revealed the truth and unifies the diversity in the universe. Most people have never been taught this concept. And of those who are aware, only a small percentage have absorbed it and developed a personal experience to their lives with the understanding of unity and diversity. We believe the time has now come for our houses of learning to take the lead in making us aware of the unseen truth as it is, and to teach systems of contemplative seeking and finding to form, reform, and transform our being. That is the basis of this proposal. The current systems that and problems today are pretty basic. Intolerance and bigotry based on the differences of any kind, faith, caste, creed, race, color, gender, and so on. The mindless exploitation of natural resources of the planet, and the epidemic of degenerative diseases of body, mind, and most of these are caused by stress. With rational education, these problems have not been solved. If anything, they're getting worse. Prevalent rational education leads us to intellectual growth within the bounds of rationality, and that analyzes, fragments, divides, classifies, and organizes everything that we're taught. Education to cultivate the feelings of unity and diversity must get us beyond the sense perception to lead students to an integration of existence. We can understand the difference between ordinary, rational, and contemplative education by saying the goal of ordinary education is a rational view of the world, what we can see, touch, feel, and hear, while that of contemplative education is a worldview that transcends rationality without denying it. We're not trying to replace rational views. We just want to learn to accept and embrace that which is unseen. traditional and contemplative education are different in very important ways. Traditional education is based on compartmentalizing, learning based on facts and logical research. Each subject, topic, lesson is centered on the rationality and can be easily shared through textbooks and mechanical processes. This has led to creating a world full of division and polarization, teaching that focuses on putting everything in a defined box. It reduces the ability and the desire to search for that which is unseen. Many children never even think about searching for that which is unseen. Contemplative education is based on the interconnection of the body, mind, and life force. The ability to see beyond that which is visible through a peaceful mind and body opens the door to all that can be felt. This ability opens up a more complete form of knowing that connects all that is seen and all that is unseen. This type of education will allow not only the minds of students to reach outside of the boxes, but to cultivate their own life force to connect with all that is. It's not a choice between the rational and the contemplative. We need a blend of both, because it's the rational when pushed to its boundaries that leads to contemplative, and the greatest scientists knew this. What traditional education is missing, it's all based on rationality. It doesn't entertain the indefinite notions such as infinity, regression, paradoxes, ultimacy of causation, and so forth. It also does not entertain indefinite ideas of the purpose and the meaning of life, unconditional love, compassion. Learning promoted by the prevalent rational education does not access such notions, both of which are included in contemplative education. Here's some perfect examples. Traditional education, they talk about bullying all the time now, but they have never taught compassion and love. They might teach about prejudice, but they've never taught unity or oneness of humankind. Discussions about the environment happen all the time now, but explaining that all life is connected by life energy is not ever discussed. In short, students are given the rational, but not the deep understanding of it. Contemplative education adds the last and most important piece. Holistic learning happens in 3 steps: gathering information through sense perception in a teaching learning process. Information gathering using the senses of knowing is where education and learning begins. But our senses can only perceive differences. Perception of differences indicates boundaries or us against them. Reflecting and revisiting of the information gathered by the senses to process it into understanding. And lastly, reflective consciousness. In this state, we return to the information we gathered with our senses and try to make sense of it. In this reflective state of consciousness, we begin to find similarities, relations, discover connections. Further processing of the collected information results understanding to the use in everyday behavior in an external world. Without this last step, scientists like Einstein and Bohm would not have made their world-changing discoveries. I'm not going to read this whole page, but basically there are 2 models that are currently being used in countries like Sweden and Denmark and Norway, and they are teaching to be a more well-informed, balanced human being, being good and upstanding and conscientious and hard workers. The education, truth, and virtue must be included in this education, and it's working quite well in these countries. They're not talking about spirituality or anything along those lines, but they are trying to bring in moral character in with the logical education format, and it's been incredibly successful in the countries that are using it. You can read more about this in the actual proposal. My concluding remarks. The scope of contemplative learning is to cultivate the feelings of unity and diversity is not limited only to building unity at a localized community level. It extends to the feelings of unity and diversity at the planetary level. We begin to feel our own self extending to other human beings as well as to the natural environment in which we live. The trees, the water, the mountains, the flora and fauna, the fish, the aquatic life, and the rocks that make the currents wheel. We're all connected. Mental calm is a prerequisite to this contemplative learning. And this learning leads to lived feelings of unity, which in turn intensifies your mental calm. Your fear-based mental stress disappears with the dawn of mental calm, and the disappearance of mental stress prevents and reverses a multitude of physical and mental diseases. We heal ourselves, and then we heal the world. This last slide is just something that popped into my head. I just think it's really pretty amazing when you look at the structure of an atom and the structure of a solar system and the structure of a galaxy. They're so similar. It's just really hard for me to believe that this is a blind accident or a coincidence. There's no doubt in my mind that the life force of some powerful intelligence is part of this whole existence. So that's all I have to say. I hope you will go back and read Shiv's proposal. Mine is just a very, very brief overview. And we do want your input and your thoughts and what you think should be added or what you think is confusing. Please let us know. That's why this working conference is happening. And thank you so much for being.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, Robin. Okay, we are a little behind schedule, but it's 11:11. I mean, come on. It's a great time to be. And so we are going to take a break now, and I believe in divine timing and all is perfect. So let's take a break, and we will reconvene at, let me see, it's 11:11, 10 after. Can we do like a 14-minute break? So whatever time that is, you got 14 minutes to get yourself a nice hot tea, and we'll look forward to connecting in 14 minutes. Well, it's like